Joining me right now is Professor Manuel Hassassian. He's the former Palestinian Envoy to the UK. Good afternoon to you, Manuel.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for joining us. I want to ask you just first of all about the hostages and the concern. 199, that number's risen higher and higher over the last 10 days, being held by Hamas. We believe in Gaza. We possibly believe underground in that whole network of tunnels under the city of Gaza and elsewhere. What do you think the chances are that any or all of those hostages will be returned safe and well?
I think if Israel stops its carnage and its genocide over Gaza, killing, innocent civilians, bombarding, all kinds of buildings, infrastructure, 800 babies have been killed. I think once that stops, I think the question of the hostages will be solved. I think the hostages will return safely after the bombing stops, and that's how things happen. When the war ends, we talk about political solutions and hostages exchanges and what have you.
Okay.
So
I'm a little bit confused because you're saying that so the hostages were taken and then we had the retaliation from Israel, and if they stop their retaliation, then those hostages will be returned. You think those hostages weren't taken as a result of missiles? Israel wasn't throwing missiles in and bombarding Gaza City before the 7th of October. I mean, yes, I know there have been retaliatory attacks. We've seen missiles coming out from Hamas. Why on earth do you think that people who would go into Israel territory after years of planning and send, 2,000 men in to massacre 1,400 people, taking elderly, grandmothers, families, women, children, even toddlers and babies hostage? Why do you think they will suddenly act, as if they're part of the United Nations, returning those people?
Well, actually, you have negated 75 years of occupation by Israel. And all these happenings for the last 75 years of building settlements, killing people, imposing curfews, building settlements, and what have you, has not been factored in the analysis why Hamas has taken such a stand.
Okay, now I just want to clarify. I don't mean to interrupt, sir, but we know there's a long history. We know that there are some very questionable actions on both sides over this. I'm not sitting here as a cheerleader for everything the Israeli governments have done over the years. That's not my job. But are you saying that the actions of Israel over the past 75 years justify what Hamas did on the 7th of October?
Because you seem to be... Ma'am, it's not a question of justification.
So you're saying it does or it doesn't? Can you just give me a straight answer? Does it?
I'm answering you. We are not justifying what Hamas has done. Okay. What we're saying is what Hamas has done is the accumulation of continuous oppression of the Palestinian people, especially in Gaza, when for the last 16 years have been living under an open-air concentration camp with no medical supplies and what have you, with no food, and the imposition.
Well, clearly they have food and clearly they have medical supplies. So we've been seeing footage from hospitals. People are alive, so they must have been having food. OK, here's the thing. This is the bit I don't understand, is how does Hamas breaking into Australia, invading Israeli territory and slaughtering all those people in the most gruesome way, the footage that is arriving, putting it on Facebook, putting it all over social media proudly, the most horrific barbaric attack. How has that helped the people of Gaza? How has that helped the Palestinian people?
Well, first of all, Hamas does not represent the entire Palestinian people. They are part of the Palestinian people.
But you're saying that Hamas acted the way they did as a result of Israel's treatment of them to protect the Palestinian people. How did that help the Palestinian people?
The 2.2 million people have to pay all this because of what Hamas has done. Is this a fair explanation of the situation? It's the question of Hamas attacking and the end result of the destruction of Gaza with killing thousands of Palestinians. This is not included in the equation when you try to analyze why Hamas has done what they have done.
Could you answer my
question,
Nobody
wants violence.
Could you answer? I mean, you can get to all those points, but could you answer the actual question I asked you? How was what Hamas did, that massacre of 1,400 Israelis, largely civilians, young, old, babies, how did that help the people of Palestine? What was the purpose of that in terms of helping the people of Gaza?
It's not a question of helping the people of Gaza.
What was
It's
the
a
purpose,
retaliation.
then?
It's an action and reaction to what Israel has been doing for
And
the last
what did
75
Hamas
years.
think the reaction of Israel would be to that?
Well, I mean, if somebody plans something, they have to bear the consequences. So it was factored in that definitely Israel is going to attack civilians. And attacking civilians is not justifiable the way they are attacking and killing people in Gaza, decimating an entire nation. Now, we are talking about moving 1.1 million towards the south, and now Israel today started bombarding Rafah and Khan Yunis.
I believe the Israelis have denied that they are bombing southern Gaza, but I don't have I cannot verify either side's information on that at this point. The thing is, okay, so Hamas acted.
80 people have been
you're saying
killed today.
Hamas's massacre was a reaction to Israeli treatment of the people of Gaza over all these last few decades, and it was totally predictable and predicted that Israel's reaction would be the bombardment of Gaza. The reality is, as you know perfectly well, there's a big difference morally, ethically, in war, in law, between killing civilians who are there as awful phrase, but the phrase people use, collateral damage, and deliberately targeting civilians, as Hamas has done. Hamas deliberately puts their supplies, as far as their missiles, from built-up civilian areas, from apartment buildings, from hospitals, from schools. They know that they are putting their own citizens in harm's way. Have they not brought that on themselves?
This is basically the propaganda of the West.
Which bit's untrue?
How many Palestinian militants, have been killed now by Israel?
I don't know.
But thousands of innocent civilians have been killed. Look at the carnage. You're showing the pictures.
Is that because the militants are all underground in that network of tunnels that they've built while they leave civilians on ground?
Definitely, they are undergrounds. And I tell you what, if Israel thinks by bombarding and killing all the Palestinians in Gaza, they are going to get rid of Hamas, they are totally wrong. Because let them show us how many of Hamas have been killed in this wage of war, except destruction of the whole city of Gaza, this what we call the prison that these people have been living for the last 16 years. What the end result of this? Why can't we move one level forward and see that what Israel doing is not going to solve the question of Hamas, and it is not justifiable to decimate an entire nation of 2.2 million people by saying that we are safeguarding and we are trying to support the people of Israel.
Isn't this...
Look, today the Americans are afraid. They're coming to the Mediterranean to circumvent any kind of regional developments on the military level. Because if Israel continues the way it is killing the Palestinians and what is happening today in Gaza, definitely regional war is inevitable. And what
is that what
does
Hamas
Israel
wants?
gain out of this? This is the question. What does Israel gain out of this?
Well, I don't think Israel's gaining very much at all. I think they just want to have their land secure. I'm asking what Hamas gains, what do the Palestinian people gain? You know as well as I do that we have seen Israel normalise their relations with many Arab states. There was likely to be a deal done with Saudi Arabia. That was the last thing that Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran wanted. That was what was on the cards. Life is being normalised.
Now you are portraying the
what does Hamas
Palestinians
gain by this?
as the occupier and the Israelis as the occupied. Poor Israelis want normalization, they want security, but they're killing everyday Palestinians in the West Bank, seizing their lands, building settlements. These are not considered nor factored in your analysis. You're talking as if we are living, in a luxurious world in the West Bank or in Gaza, and Israel is seeking peace and security for
I'm not. I disapprove of some of those settlements.
No, but this is what the international community is portraying through the biased media, against the Palestinians. You're not looking at the Palestinian side.
I'm not biased against the Palestinians
but you're looking only at what Hamas has done.
I have no bias against the Palestinians
as being justifiable to what
Manuel,
Hamas has done.
I simply want to know, what did Hamas think they were going to do for the benefit of the Palestinian people?
I don't know what Hamas thinks. I can't go into the minds of Hamas.
But they knew this would happen.
The Palestinian
they
Authority.
Knew this would happen.
And the Palestinian Authority for the last 30 years have been telling you, please let us have the two-state solutions. President Abbas for the last 3 years was warning the West that the escalation in the West Bank and in Gaza is going to trigger a massive war. And this is the end result of it.
Okay.
Because, the West is not listening to what the the sound of reason coming out from our leadership, and the end result, you have to deal with Hamas. That's
okay. Just a final question.
Situation.
Can I ask you just a really simple question? It's a question I put to a lot of my guests who say that what Israel is doing is unacceptable, it's a war crime, etc., etc. What would have been, given the massacre of 1,400 largely civilians, Israelis, on the 7th of October, what do you believe is a proportionate response? What would have been an acceptable, reasonable response from Israel to that?
Killing the entire 2.2 million people.
No, you clearly don't think that. So what would be a reasonable response?
Because this is what Israel is doing.
No, that wasn't what I asked you.
Thousands of people are being killed.
You think that what Israel is doing is not right? So what would be... I find it extraordinary. If you know that this is the wrong response, what do you believe would be the correct response, the reasonable, moral response?
The correct response is to kill all the Palestinians by Israel. You're just sticking to one side of the story and not the other.
I'm asking a question. Why don't you answer the question? You don't want to answer the question. You don't want to answer the question. Why won't you answer that question?
That Hamas has responded to 16 years of embargo and siege and what have you.
Is it
right or wrong? This is up to you. But this is a natural reaction for people under occupation.
What would be the reasonable, proportionate response from a state who's had 1,400 people killed in a massacre by Hamas? What should they have done? If you were running the Israeli government and you wanted to act in the moral way, what would you do at this point? Would you invite everyone from Hamas to tea? What are you suggesting?
I ask the Israeli one simple question. Did they finish Hamas with their onslaught now? Or still thousands of Palestinians have to be killed before they claim victory over Hamas? Where is the international conscience? How do you expect? I mean, you are justifying Israel to continue with killing. This is the international community. You're just watching us being killed and maimed. No food, no electricity, and nothing.
I've been raising that concern
the 1,400
for 2
that
weeks
Hamas has killed or whatever.
Yeah. You're not going to answer my question. We'll give up. Professor Manuel Hassassian, former Palestinian envoy to the UK. I appreciate you joining us. I wish you'd answered some of the questions I asked you, but
I answered all the questions. But the answers are not really in the light of your questions, because you were directing the questions only towards Hamas.
Okay, all right.
Unfortunately.
Thanks for joining us. Appreciate that.